All right, so welcome to week 10 in JavaScript. I just wrapped up the video for the U code and gave some thought to what I wanted us to do for attendance. So we'll go over that in a minute. But you can notice already that there's no AI checkpoint this week. And honestly, it's because I think the checkpoint does a good job, in this case, reviewing the concepts we've been covering. And at this point now, we're updating by adding new inputs. But this check code is really the final part of our CRUD, right? So we finished CRUD already, the create, read, update, delete, right? So actually, we finished it in right here in week 8. Okay, so at this point at week 10, we're revisiting it as kind of we have started to do with our decision steps already, our decision app already by doing the delete. So in this week, it made me stop and kind of go, okay, going forward, where are we at? So at this point, after week 10, then we're going to do another input and then we'll have our step 4 for decision app. So in that case, most likely that one will be handling the edit and some other things that I've already been thinking about we will do there, but that's its main goal. And then moving after we get all the inputs. So this transportation will be the last, the collecting, calculating, and displaying transportation will be the last input we have for the form. So then we move on to form validation. And one of the things that I've realized is that last semester, which was the first semester I ran this course in this format, this updated code format, I had already started at week 12 last time, realizing because last semester, I'll just tell you, I did not have these U codes in here. And after working with Brianna and talking to some other people and looking at where I saw the students really struggle, it was because they were not actually taking what they were learning and applying it. And that's what brought about the U code concepts. So what I had done last semester that I'll have to figure out how to reintegrate is actually doing form validation. So form validation, so important because, we've been all this time just, and some of you have done the required for the inputs on the HTML to block them from being submitted without input, but we actually need to do custom form validation. So we'll do that. So we do form validation, and then we'll do some cleanup on there, and then we'll have another. This is still form validation, and then we'll have our next step 5, where most likely we will implement form validation into our inputs. And then we move on from 14, 15, and 16 to doing asynchronous. Okay, so this is really where we're asking our code to go do something and we're waiting for it to come back. So it's not like most of the code we've written, although, by the way, we've actually already been writing asynchronous code, and the event listener is a good example of that. So the event listener sets and waits. So even though our code is ready and programmed and coded to do something, it's awaiting something. Okay, now that I'm pointing to awaiting here, that actually means something specific. But just to let you know, so we're going to finish up the rest of the inputs. We're going to do form validation, and then we'll move into async while we're continuing to do some steps in our app development. Now, last semester, I had students actually implement an API into their code, but I also gave them an opportunity to actually just implement AQI, which is air quality index, for a specific location, which is what we code in the carbon footprint. So just to give you that look forward. So now let's roll back into week 10 because kind of leads into something I am going to do, or we're going to do this time. So before I get into this week is a little change. I decided we've been going real heavy on the coding, which is, by the way, also good. Anytime, I mean, if I could get coding into every assignment, I probably would. But I think this one is an important point at where we're at, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. But just FYI, we're 2 weeks away from spring break. Now, spring break in this case is after week 12. So I will have week 13 published by the time I leave, and I will be traveling, so I will not be around during spring break. Just FYI. Technical interviews here in week 10 will start. There'll be a couple already. If you haven't signed up, hopefully you're checking the schedule and planning. Something really important I want to say is that debugging is an important part of learning to code. As a matter of fact, debugging is a way you see how well you understand code. And here's the deal, I'm happy to help. But what I do know is that giving somebody the answer or and I've had this now twice this semester, where I was too quick to give an answer doesn't allow you to develop your troubleshooting debugging skill. Okay. So one of the things that will most likely I will say if you ask me for, hey, why is my code not working? I would say, what have you tried? Because what you have tried will help me give you a better support when I know what you've looked at. And this is where your dev tools that I have been, I have been talking about dev tools since week 2 of this semester. Okay. So just know you may hear me say that. All right, so this video is one that I found helpful, and I want you to watch the whole thing. It's 10 minutes long. It actually talks about, because I think many people right now are doom and gloom about coding, and I get it. I mean, I can see why people would think that, but there's also a reason that that is, in my opinion, overhyped, because of understanding kind of what led us to this point. And so, what I love about web developer Pete here is that this video helps kind of explain the context, not kind of explains the context of how the current round of layoffs that people are just completely blaming on AI, and not that AI doesn't have a piece of it. But in other words, okay, watch the whole thing. Pay attention to code that works and systems that are engineered, because these are important topics. Again, 10 minutes is not that long. And then here's your reflection, right? So reflect on your experience in learning to code in this course so far in the context of this video. The aha moment. Pete mentions the understanding is more important than speed. And I completely agree with that, right? So share a moment in this course when you struggled to make an input or a calculation, something work, right? How did you proceed? How did that process of fixing it teach you more than a perfect AI answer would? Or in this case, I would argue an answer from a tutor or an instructor, because somebody giving you the answer versus letting you have some time to think about it is, to me, the place where you start to really, the more time, and the idea is not to spend a ton of time, but some time doing it. And then the multiplication factor. So he talks about, because there's a famous, like, how much of Google's code is being written by AI, and the answer is about 25%, but most of that's just like standard boilerplate for them. And so they kind of let the AI do the stuff that humans would have done in the past. The problem there becomes junior developers, and how do we grow more developers in this case, right? You can think about this in the context of the carbon footprint. And then depth versus speed, right? So learning properly compared to so think back, right? Your perspective on learning properly changing compared to your first week in the course. 100, 200 words reply, one substantive reply here. Okay. Oh, I'll put points on here by the time you get here. Probably 80 for this and 20 for that. All right. Again, stuff like this, I just think it's timely. It definitely reflects upon where we're at in the course, and I look forward to the discussion. Talk to you later.